In this module, I will be walking you through the EQ report. As with each of our TTISI reports, our EQ report starts with the introduction. This section not only identifies the purpose of the assessment and report, but identifies key EQ terms for the report recipient. It is important to note that you may not agree with all of the statements in your report. That's understandable. Work through your debrief to identify points of agreement and disagreement to even better personalize the report. Next, we find the general characteristics. This section is a narrative of the recipient's overall emotional intelligence and how that score translates into everyday interactions. Asking the recipient to identify key phrases that stand out to them, such as, "Samuel will continue to look for ways to succeed when faced with challenges or resistance," starts to open up the debriefing conversation and uncover anecdotal stories to relate back to throughout the report. The focus in this section should be on acknowledging where the person may be doing well emotionally and beginning to identify areas or potential opportunity for development and growth. In the section titled Emotional Quotient Assessment Results, the quantitative data collected from the assessment answers are introduced. The recipient is able to see their score broken down by each of the 5 dimensions: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, social awareness, and social regulation. We also introduce the recipient to the mean or score of the general population. A coral-colored bar located in a specific score range represents the scores of 68% of the population. If you are to the left of the coral bar, or 2 or more standard deviations from the mean, you're considered underdeveloped in that dimension. Within the coral bar, still to the left of the mean, indicates that your abilities are moderately developed in that dimension. Just to the right of the mean, still within the coral bar, shows a developed dimension, and any score outside of the coral bar to the right is a well-developed dimension. By considering the numeric scores in each of the 5 dimensions, it may be easier to identify those areas where the recipient is doing well and where the individual may benefit from additional development. Remember, emotional intelligence can be developed. The emotional quotient scoring information section starts to tie in the assessment scoring to self, others, and overall EQ. Your total EQ score is the average score of all 5 EQ dimensions. The EQ self score is the average of the self-awareness, self-regulation, and motivation scores. The EQ others score is the average of the social awareness and social regulation scores. Using this 3-graph portion of the report, the recipient can quickly see if their EQ struggle is within themselves or with their interactions with others. The What You Can Do section of the report outlines specific steps that the recipient can take to improve their EQ based on their particular score. For example, since Samuel is moderately self-aware, it is suggested that he write in a journal about his emotional responses to situations that were significant. Suggestions are included for all 5 of the EQ dimensions. It's not mandatory for the recipient to complete all the suggestions, but by choosing 3 suggestions from the dimensions with the lowest scores, you're on the track to overall improvement. Last but not least is the emotional quotient wheel. We will go more in depth on how to read the wheel in another module. But in general, this is a visual representation of your EQ scores. By looking at the volume of color in each dimension, the recipient can quickly see where their EQ is good and where it may need a little work. The emotional quotient results can be used as a standalone report or as part of one of our multi-science reports, such as Trimetrics EQ, made up of DISC, 12 driving forces, and emotional quotient. The EQ element adds depth to the how of DISC and the why of 12 driving forces. EQ helps to answer, how do I perceive myself and others, and how do I react to those perceptions? When sharing EQ results, it is especially important to pass no judgment. Lower numbers than expected can cause a recipient stress. The great thing about EQ is that with a little effort, measurable improvements can be made. Thank you for joining me in reviewing the TTISI EQ report.